Morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Scott Mangelson. I'm a National Director for Microsoft and have the pleasure of kicking off our presentation today on App in a Day, where we'll be talking about Microsoft's Power Platform. I'm joined today by two others from Sonata, one of our great partners. Ajmal is the Associate Vice President of Business Applications, and Girija is a technical architect who will be presenting most of the content for our conversation today. So moving along to the agenda, we can advance the slide. I'm going to start with just a couple of minutes of kicking off our presentation to talk about the Microsoft Cloud and how that relates to the Power Platform. And then we'll go through an overview of the platform itself, and then kind of four key areas that are associated with this platform. The first is Power Apps. We'll then talk about the data infrastructure layer called the Common Data Service. And then two other really important tools one is called Flow, and the other is our business intelligence tool called Power BI. So with that, let me jump in and we'll get started. The first thing I just wanted to mention is to just really talk about our overall view of the world from a Microsoft perspective. I think most people recognize that as a company ourselves, we've gone through quite a cultural revolution as we've moved our entire business, much of what was licensed software, to the cloud. And so we've really thought differently about the way that we look at the world. But we really see our mission as this ability to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. That seems very simple at first, but if you think about it, it's quite an ambitious mission to really help every single person and every company in this, on the planet to do more and to be more effective and more efficient. And we do that through our cloud solution offering, and there's really two components to it. The first is the intelligent cloud, which is this intelligent platform, and we'll talk about couple of our platforms today that really help manage the transactions, but also the intelligent edge, which are all these millions, actually now billions of devices, whether they're cell phones or security cameras or communication tools that are built around the edge of the cloud that need to communicate with the platform. So most of our time today is going to be talking about one of our main solution areas, which is the business applications area. But that's also very dependent upon our modern workplace and our apps and infrastructure capabilities. So on the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about what that is. So the real foundation of our cloud offering is our Microsoft Azure platform. The way that I like to think about is this is the capability that really helps me know what's going on with my organization. It's an open, flexible, enterprise-grade computing platform. We then add and integrate with that our Microsoft Office 365, which is our collaboration tools. This is really for sharing and communicating both within your company and outside. And then the applications for taking action, or the doing part of execution, is around the Dynamics 365 tool set. And when we think about combining these three clouds, there's really no other company, I think, that's positioned as uniquely as Microsoft to provide the infrastructure, the collaboration tools, and the enterprise applications all from one vendor that work seamlessly together. So next slide, I just wanted to talk a little bit of an introduction about what the Microsoft platform looks like. You can advance the slide. I think we're stuck on, there we go. So just going to give you a quick overview of Microsoft Dynamics 365 in terms of the functional capabilities. And really, it's a full-featured ERP and CRM platform that includes solutions such as finance and operations, HR or talent, sales and marketing and customer service, and much more. But it really is a purpose-built set of applications that companies can use to drive their business, both from the front office all the way through to the back office execution. So we won't spend much time today talking about Dynamics itself, because we're going to jump into the Power Platform. So if we could advance to the next slide, I'll give a quick introduction there, and then I'll turn it over to Ajmal with. So we'll just let this build out for a minute. But the way that we think about the Power Platform is at the center, there are two core applications. There's what's called Power Apps, which is a design and development infrastructure for developing applications that extend Dynamics 365, and Power BI, which is the business intelligence and analytics engine that looks at the data that come from the transactional systems built on Dynamics 365. And to do that, to make those systems talk to one another, is our integration platform we call the Common Data Service. And this is really where the data gets exchanged between all of the applications to be able to execute on a business process or a workflow. The second little box you see there on the left is called Microsoft Flow. This is an ability to take action in applications that are outside of Microsoft. Everyone, in most cases, have other applications that need to connect with their enterprise application, and Flow is the tool that connects Dynamics to all of those other third-party tools, and we'll talk quite a bit about that here in just a minute. As we build this slide, you'll see that it also has connectors and integration capabilities that allow those applications to speak together, and really draws on the data from the Office collaboration tools, as well as the Dynamics 365. But everything is built on this Azure infrastructure that allows us to scale to almost any scale that is required. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ajmal, and let's move into the next part of the presentation, and just thank everyone for their time and attendance today.
Okay, so thanks, Scott, for a quick introduction on the Microsoft vision and the platform. Scott talked about the various business applications which are part of the Dynamics 365 suite of applications. So we did see there are applications from the Microsoft Dynamics 365 stack, which provide functionality to address your core business functions around finance, sales, and marketing. But apart from that, in an enterprise, typically you see there are a lot of other operations which you still either do it manually today, or you leverage some of the off-the-shelf applications like Excel, or you build standalone applications to cater to these specific task-based, role-based activities. So in order to bridge the gap between these enterprise applications with the white spaces that you see in an enterprise, Microsoft Business Platform provides a robust platform to enable that last mile digital transformation. So think of scenarios where your shop floor guys need a simple application to manage their day-to-day activities relevant to their role. For example, if they have to do any inspection on any machinery, or if they have to do any kind of approvals. So many of these simple tasks today either are done manually, or you embed these functionality in standalone apps. So with Microsoft Business Platform, you can enable end-to-end digital transformation integrated with your core applications around sales, marketing, and operations. So when you look at challenges in building business applications, so typically many organizations want to automate their processes seamlessly across divisions and across various functions. But some of the typical challenges that you see is the lack of budget. Sometimes it is lack of time and resources, and lack of enterprise capabilities within these applications. So Microsoft Business Platform addresses some of these because it provides a platform to quickly build apps to enable these last mile transformation needs in a few days or few weeks. For example, you can leverage the Business Apps platform today to build apps for these automation and for these processes in a matter of few days and weeks. So to begin with, we will start with Power Apps. Power Apps helps in automating your task-based, role-based activities. It helps in creating immersive applications which can run across web and mobile devices. It also provides enterprise-grade security and application management capabilities, and it can easily connect with your cloud and on-premise applications. It also provides pro developer extensibility, where you can enhance the applications, build custom business rules and code. So let's deep dive into some of the aspects of the platform itself. So this is typically a day's workshop which we normally do. So App in a Day is a day-long workshop which is typically done in person, and where we take you through the application platform, business application platform, and also it includes hands-on exercises building these apps during the workshop. But today we have condensed the entire course, App in a Day course, in for about 90 minutes. So I'll take you through some of the key aspects of the various components of the business apps platform, and also we will go through some quick demos on how to go about building these applications. So let's start with Power Apps. So there are two types of apps that you can build with the Power Apps platform. So the first one is called the canvas-based apps. So canvas-based apps start with visual design. These are canvas-based apps are typically recommended for any activity-based or role-based applications. So for example, if you want to build applications for approvals, for example, it could be either purchase approvals, or you want to build apps for some asset maintenance, where you want to quickly capture the details at the shop floor and things like that. So if you have any specific small use cases relevant to a specific role or a task, so canvas-based apps are the best suited application type for building these kind of apps. Apart from that, in a canvas-based app, you can mash up the data from different data sources. So you can bring in data from not only your dynamic suite of applications, but also from different other data sources. These applications could be either running on cloud, or these could be running on-prem. So you can bring in data from multitude of data sources into these apps. Then the second type of business apps or the Power Apps are called as model-driven apps. These are typically data-driven apps. So we leverage the common data services here. So they you start building a model-driven app, starting with a creation of a data model, and then building processes and forms around that. So we will drill down into each of these type of apps a little more. as we go along. So we talked about Canvas-based apps. So the typical users for a Canvas-based apps are the business power users. The business power users, the platform is built in such a way that you need Excel or PowerPoint kind of skills to actually build an application. So if you are very familiar building Excel, very familiar with Excel and how to use your expressions in Excel, and if you have some UI skills building good PowerPoint slides, so you can as well build a Power App. So with Power Apps or the Canvas apps, you start with creating your using the visual editor. You start creating your forms, and then you create you bind these forms with data. So you can connect with multitude of data sources, as I talked about, and you build logic using some simple expressions. And these apps can be later published for both web and mobile. So we talked about the ease of building these apps. So the app Workspace, when you go to powerapps.com, the app Workspace provides you what you see, what you get kind of interface where you can drag and drop controls to create your app. Then you can build simple application logic with Excel kind of expressions. So if you see on the top here, you see there is a formula bar, which is very similar what you see in Excel. So you can you can use Excel-like expressions to build your application logic, and you can bind data from multiple data sources. So if you see here, there are a bunch of connectors available. You see a lot of applications. If you go to the Power Apps website, you see a lot of connectors available to various popular applications, which you can leverage out of the box to consume that data in your Power Apps. Okay, so once the apps are created, so you can publish these apps. So you can publish the apps on all the platforms. So you can have these apps up and running on iOS, Android, Windows, and web. And it's very easy to share the applications. It's very it provides enterprise grade control and security features the way you want to share these applications within your organization. And also it provides an admin center to manage these applications and environments. So in terms of the management and control, so the identity is managed using the Azure Active Directory. So you can leverage the Active Directory features with policies and multi-factor authentications to control your access to the applications. Then there is an admin center provided by the platform, which provides detailed audit logs and usage analytics of the application, and also helps in managing the security and data, how it is being used by the individual who has uploaded or installed these applications on their devices. So there are a lot of features available for managing these apps and controlling these apps within an enterprise. And further, you can extend these applications with custom code. For example, if you have any legacy platforms or you have applications where there are connectors not available from the community, or on the marketplace. So you can build your own connectors. You can also leverage the extended capabilities of the Microsoft.
All right, folks. So in the interest of time, we're going to skip ahead into the demo section. So I'll ask Girija to take over and just walk us through the demo, and then we'll get back to the presentation and Ajbal's piece soon after. So over to you, Girija.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll walk you through the Power Apps canvas as well as the model-driven apps, and then we can cover the rest of the slides regarding the model-driven apps. Just to give you a background, Power Apps, as Ajmal was mentioning, is more a kind of free-flowing. What you see is what you get kind of stuff where you can drag and drop controls. You have more flexibility of designing that app rather than uh, getting into the uh, getting more structure control, whereas model driven app is more driven by the underlying model, and there are very specific uh, areas on which you can do model driven apps. For example, in Canvas app you can use actually any type of data source, but in model driven app you in all probability will have to use the common data model entity to build model driven apps. So before we start how to create a app, let's go through how to use sign up. So if you go to powerapps.microsoft.com, and obviously you'll have to sign up for the license, you have to take the subscriptions, and you have to sign up for a O365 subscription, and then the power app plan 1, plan 2, depending on what exactly you need. Once you sign in, I'm already signed in, so it gets me signed on the same browser. This is the UI you get, where you have your list of apps that you have created, uh, or you have apps that you can edit, where you are the owner. If somebody has shared with you what kind of apps they have shared, and you get a bit about the flows, a link to go to flows, and you get to some entities as well, where you can see the common data model entities. I'll come back to this later. So to create an app, it's pretty easy. You can actually go and say create an app. You can choose Canvas and or model driven. Uh, I'll first create a Canvas app. I'll quickly go through creating a Canvas app. In this demo, I'll be using one of the entities from the common data model. So I'll use the common data service, which is a service which encapsulates the common data model where your data is, and I'll use the contact entity, which is pretty simple entity. So I'll choose a phone layout. I already have the connection added, but you can actually go in and see the sources that are available. Apart from that, if you come here, you can actually see that you can create connections. You can create custom connectors. Custom connectors are, if you have a predominantly a on-premise system which doesn't have the service endpoints, you can actually wrap the service endpoint and expose it from your system and use gateways. Gateway to connect to those services and use connectors onto the app. So essentially, in those scenarios, you use custom connectors and gateways. So I'll go back, click my connection, and as I said, I'll choose the contact app. The contact entity was a choose and a say connect. It starts building the app. Essentially, it creates three pages app. One a detail scrolling detail front page, and edit and add page. So where you can add a contact or you can edit and view details of a contact. So it'll take a couple of seconds to build the app. We'll go through the design window or designer window where you can actually change and do stuff. So you can. So this, as I said, this creates three screen. On the left hand side, you will find the screen details, and each of the screen has controls. It uses a gallery control and sort of other controls that it has. And the second screen is the detail screen, where you can click one of those in the browse screen and come back and see. You can obviously add more values to it. And then there is obviously an edit screen. You can add screens to it, and you can use this as a starting point to get along further on your app design. So let's go and see how we can add a few other details. So in this, it's pretty easy if you use this data card and the controls that are given. So what you need to do is you click edit, and it will show you the fields that it is currently using, and it is using in the body street one, image, city, and email. So what I can do is I can actually go in and then use, say, first name. So I'll say full name. So if you see back, it got changed to the full name instead of the email, right? It's that easy to do that. Coming on the detail screen, you could click on the, because this is single control, you could click on this and go on adding or removing fields, and go to the edit fields over here, and you could add a field if you want. Say I decide to add the birthday, and it gets added over here. I can obviously add arrange it the way I want. Okay, I'll close this. Yes, I can arrange this. So the birthday came up. So I can do those. I can change the colors. Regarding the expressions, I could easily write an expression if I want. Over here, it defaults obviously because it's bound to a control, and if you go to the control, it will show you where it is bound, and you could change if you want to change anything. It's because it's a card, you'll have to obviously go ahead and unlock to change the property, which essentially means it's not bound to that control again, but you can change the value. There's you can actually go in and go to the property. So if you really look at it, these are pretty much properties that that are there, and you could change the value of it. So field, yes, this is a data field it's bound to. You could, and yeah, so you can do that. For navigating, you have simple formulas. Like if you click on this, you would see that it has a formula of navigate. It just, so you can place any control and you can say navigate from this screen to that screen, and you have some transition while you navigate. The upper border pretty much allows you to add screen, insert, set up the formatting. You could insert controls if you want, and if you're designing a new screen, you could design place controls individually if you want, or you could use some collection controls like gallery uh, that has few options for you to bind to a larger collection rather than a single row of data. You could use forms which are helps you comes in both edit and display option. In the edit option, it actually allows you to submit data back to the entity if the underlying entity supports it. And here you can actually go in and add more data sources if you want. You can right now it will show me the data source that I already added, and if I want, I can use more data sources. I don't have connection, so it's either showing me static data, or I can go into this and choose another entity, and I could mash up the data and show them from any other entity. In the action, I can the little bit code that it allows you is to invoke a flow or accept data from a flow. In terms of variables and collections, you could use collections and variables that are available in the Power Apps, where you can actually store a data and then play around with it, changing the value if you want a persistent data to stay. So here you can find collections. If you create using the formulas, collections would start showing over here, and you can use variables over here also. So that's a bit on the Power App, and once you are done, all you need to do is save it. You can give a name to the app. So I'll say demo app canvas, and I'll say save it to the cloud. And once you have saved this, you can actually share this app if you want, and you can share it within your organization, within the with users within your organization, and you can so I can I can share it with Ajmal. He's one of my users, so I can either give him a co-owner, and obviously I'll have to give him to the underlying access to the underlying database. I'm not adding him right now. So this is about the apps of canvas type, where you can actually go ahead and create a new screen and start placing you could choose few templates that are available, and you could start absolutely from a blank screen, and you could just start inserting text boxes and start binding it to the data source that is available. So you can do that. You can start controls. There are multiple controls that are available, drop downs, depending on, but you'll have to obviously do a bit of code if you are taking, depending on the control that you are using. If you have a combo box, you will have to obviously fill it valid values and the default values and stuff like that. So a little bit of expression is required for you to be. So you can choose multiple or a double type of combo box. So these are common things that you can do, and it's easy because it's all expression based. So I'll just switch from this. If you are changing the app, you can actually go ahead and save this, and then you can as many times you do, as long as you have shared. Every time you'll have to save and publish it, so that the users that you have shared will be able to access the newer app, change app. So I'll just switch and move into a model driven app. As I said, model driven is pretty much based on the model that you've created on your common data service. In the common data service, you typically create forms, business rules, workflows, views, and that is what you use. So essentially, it's a no code. In the Canvas app, you use a bit of code, a bit of expression, and in a little bit complex Canvas app, you will have to use quite a few expressions. But model driven app is a no code. So once your forms and forms, views, and your business rules are defined on the common data model, that is what you use. So I will get demo app model driven. I'll just give this and I'll say done. So once I am done, what it does is it creates something like this, and I can go ahead and so what I'll do is in the sub area I'll select entity. So what I'll do is I'll select the account entity over here. I'll say entity over here, and okay, and I'll say save and close. Okay, and so now the entity view is essentially the forms and the views that I have created. So it will show me all the forms and the views that I have. I'll cover the CDS where you create forms and views on while I'll be demoing the CDS. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and select the account in views, list me all the views. So what I'll do is I'll all accounts, active accounts, and my active accounts. And charts, I'll just say account by industry, and dashboards. There are no dashboards here. So if I have business flow, I can choose one or more flows, and if I have dashboards, I can choose one or more dashboards. And what I can do is I can save this and I can publish this. I'll run the app from here so that it so essentially this is if you this is a view that you create on the common data model. So essentially this is nothing but the views that are there, and it's pretty close to what you see in CRM app. So yeah, so this is how it works. It's very tightly binded to the underlying entity. You cannot do a lot of change on the app itself unless you go to the view underlying view and change that. So it's the same thing. You can operate and you can create new, you can do everything, but you cannot change anything. You just bind it to the entity. So it's a more less flexible on the Power App side, the model driven app, because the view definition and all the metadata is created uh, at the common data model side. So I'll walk you through two apps that I had already created in the interest of time. So I'll close this. So this is the app that I created, and my sequence of demos will follow the this app. So here I have one app and I have created the one custom column. So I can go ahead and add. It's a simple. I haven't done much of a change except adding a few fields, and I can do it, and if I do a save, it saves, and it gives my record that I added over here. So I can actually go into the details of it. If I click, obviously I'll see if it is approved or not, and I can either edit it or I can go ahead and delete it. So I'll go ahead and delete it, and it will delete that record, and it will no longer show me. So you essentially can see this in the Power App in your mobile because it's a mobile format. For the model app, I created the same model app here. I use the default views, but you can create your own views and use that. So here you have all that you see, and you could click here and you can go in and say new account and add an account. One test and say let's say 10,000. I should see somewhere. Oh, okay. Let's save. Yeah. So you could see this creator. It's as good as CRM. So it's just that it comes up as an app. If you're used to CRM, you would be used to the approval and the business rules applicable on the CRM. You're essentially using those views and metadata that you have created. So I'll cover the common data service a bit. So what is this common data service? So the common data service is a service on the common data model that has been exposed for consuming the entities on the common data model, and it contains entities and option sets and all those artifacts that you can create, and you could extend it, you could modify the standard entity. So it comes with a set of standard entities and that you can modify. You could create your own entities, and you can push data into this common data model, and you can build apps on top of it. You could actually move data from the common data model into your downstream applications, or this common data model can act as a upstream application as such, pulling data from other systems. So if you go to Power Apps, if you go to Admin Center, if you're admin, you will have to first create an environment, and after you create an environment, you can create a database. Now this database is nothing but the common data model. And if you go here, I have created database, and you could give security, and you could add people whom you want to have access to this database. Once you are done with this, you should be able to come to your Power Apps, and from here you should see those environments that you have created. You could switch to one of this environment, and once you switch this, if you go to the entities, you will find the list of entities that you already have. So so if you go to so here I have few entities, and I have the contact entities. You could create a new entity, or you can exist. So let's go and see how we can edit or add a field to one entity. I have already had a field added, so I can actually go ahead and add this. You could click on this as simple as clicking on add a field and give some name. I'll not add this, but you could choose from a lot of options that you have. Yeah, So you have a lot of options that you can use. You could use either the option sets, or you could use date and time, currency, all those types, and you could add that. So I'll say yes because I don't need to add here. So I have already added one field onto this. Is approved is something that I have added, and that is why you see this name as CRAC3. So it's a custom field. No other fields, standard fields you will not find, and it's custom. Going back to the entities, you could add a pure uh, add a full entity if you want, if in your common data model, and you could then add fields as you need, so that you can pull data from other systems to this common data model. You can do that. So if you go to any of these entities, what you will see is that it not only contains fields, but it contains business rules, it contains views, contains forms, charts, and dashboards. And this is exactly what you see when you build a model driven app and select an entity. A model driven app is strictly bound to a single entity, and that is why you see all those forms and business rules, views, dashboards that you see while you are designing a model, when you're creating a model driven app. You could obviously use data integration to pull data into the common data model, and there are a variety of sources that are available. You could always use a custom connector using a gateway to pull data from on-premise data sources. There is a SDK that is available also to enable you to pull data from if you want to push data from code. If you have something where you want to directly push data through code onto the common data model. So these are the currently available sources. This list keeps updating. Initially, it keeps updating in the sequence of the connector first releases for Power BI, and then moves on to Power Apps, Flow, and then comes into the data integration space. What I'll do is I'll go through the slide, and so yeah, I think we were here. Okay. I think we were here. Yeah. So as Ajmal was saying, we all the identity is managed through AAD, which enables OAuth authentication. You could obviously do all multi-factor authentication, anything that is supported by AAD. Your admin center in Power Apps provides a log. It gives you usage analytics data and data management. You could do, as you saw, you could do entity management, data management from the admin center. You could centrally manage all your apps. You could share apps. You could unshare apps across the organization, and that's what the admin center allows you to do. So as I said, you could extend your application using a bit of custom code. You could build custom connectors to consume data from legacy systems. You could obviously use Azure machine learning and Bing APIs. Any SaaS service that is available out, you could use in combination to increase the uh, app productivity, or the usage of the app. You could use Bing to show a location on the Power App. Those controls are obviously supported. So what it does is you you tailor make solutions, and you can use model driven apps to embed forms. So you can have developers created form for you, and you could just, by clicking four buttons, you could actually give an app to a line of business user, and enabling him to be able to enter data to a very specific region, data space, or a very specific business process. And you could make it highly task and role based apps based on the task that particular person performs or particular role performs. You could build end-to-end solutions using workflows, business rules, and you could use the connectors. So there are more than 200 data sources that are supported right now, and it enables you to extend your application across multiple data sources. So the model-driven apps, as I showed you, provides a metadata-driven architecture. So it's very tightly integrated to the metadata, and for creating the app without writing any code. So it's a no-code no-code approach to designing an app. So it has very rich components because you design the forms, the views, and the backend. So it only uses the metadata. You could add business rules and business flows to the model, and then these are responsive apps because they don't one of the reason is they don't allow you to customize anything, so they are highly responsive apps on the web and obviously on the mobile. So what this model apps does is you can create apps around forms and processes. You can business rules, workflows. So you are essentially building an app around the forms and the processes. You could drag and drop fields controls on the designer of the form. So forms can be multiple columns, multiple steps. You could use multiple forms also in your app, but you have to design that form. While designing the form, you could drag and drop fields. You can drag and drop controls to design the form, and then you can bind the form to the app. It gives you a very responsive, rich experience, and enables you to use across apps, showing dashboard, charts, whatever you create on top of that entity. So the flow is business process flow is the visual indicators that that you can design, where you can define a business process uh, to to ensure which stage or represent the business process on the stage where it is right now, like a lead uh, moving into an opportunity. So you can define the business process stage, and it can graphically represent where that lead is. It reduces obviously the need for the training, and because it exactly tells you where that business process is at current stage, and you could configure it to support the common line of business methodologies. So it's a very powerful process that you can use, business process flow, to enable users know exactly where a particular business process is at which stage. So server side logic are bound to entities. You can create calculated fields, you could create entities, you could create validation on the fields, you could work with workflows that are defined at your entity side. So these are all on the server side that you can do, and all of this are honored when you work with that app on with that form, with those forms or the UI interface on the app. So developer capabilities, we have OData Web API, .NET SDK that you can work with, and as I said, push data and deal with. There is a Visual Studio integrated developer toolkit as well that you can use and define and then publish, rather than working. If you don't like working on the web page, you could use the Visual Studio. So this was a demo for the model driven app and the Canvas app. And so we'll jump to common data service. As I showed you, the common data service is nothing but an encapsulation around the common data model. Is common data service is a suite of products that integrate with a single system. So what this common data model gives you is a single system of data where you can push in data and you can take data from there, uh, but it gives you a holistic view of how your data looks like. You could store data with standard entities that comes default with the common data model, or you can create your own custom entities. You could build Power Apps and you can automate flows on top of it uh, to enable people to use interact with the data that you have in the common data servers, and then flows for triggering any workflows approvals. You could add business rules, validations, and you can define role-based security. I think we covered that. So the common data service for apps is the standard entities that represent the common usually concepts like contacts, accounts. These are standard entities that come and you can always extend it. You could extend them by fields, adding relationship, adding new entities. You could create calculator fields, business rules. You could import, synchronize, use Power Query or any of those data integration mechanism that I demoed. And you could use a security model to ensure that your data, that specific persons are allowed to see any sensitive data. Uh, is There is a SDK available for pro dev applications. Uh, if you are wanting to do something from a code base, you could use the SDK that is available. So the Power Apps, essentially, which Power Apps platform, which is comprises of the common data servers, the designers, the Canvas Studio, gives you a highly unifying and productive platform, uh, which can integrate with lot of other applications, including the Dynamics business applications, plus the third-party SaaS applications that you can use to build highly rich and productive apps. So this was the demo for the common data service. I have already covered that. What we'll do is we'll go through the flow. So a flow is nothing but a framework to automate business processes. So if you want triggers to be enabled on your applications to react to a change that happens in your application or a data model, you could use flow. If you want approvals to be triggered, grant approvals, get notifications. Say for example, if you need that whenever a customer is added, I should be notified. That is where a flow should be used. Or you want to know whenever a particular record is updated, so you can quickly create a flow, leave it there, and whenever somebody updates apart from you, you should be able to get a mail or a notification. So Flow is a service essentially, and it has graphical designer, easy to use graphical designer, drag and drop kind of mechanism for automating workflows across apps and services. So you could use it in conjunction with business application and services that are exposed. And you can obviously use gateways and connectors, custom connectors to connect to your on-premise applications. So you could connect to data systems that you are already using and create the data you need. could create workflows, you could create approval, which is a very interesting feature in Flow. I will be demoing that. And you could edit flows on the web, and it has a mobile platform also to be able to edit. You could use that mobile platform to monitor your flow in terms of how it is going through, or is there any error. So you can actually essentially see the admin center of the flow in the mobile, and you could approve requests or manage them on the web and mobile. So what comprises a flow? Essentially, a flow is a mix out of either a trigger or a recurrence. But essentially, you typically use a flow for a trigger, because a flow is a very lightweight service. So you should use it only for a trigger that kicks off the flow. Essentially, when a record is created, or a record is updated, or a record is deleted. And you could, it can be on a schedule though, or an event on any other service. All the events that are supported, uh, you can trigger it, or you can actually choose a recurrent schedule, say recurring at every 10 minutes. uh, Obviously, when the trigger happens, you need an action. So what's the action that you want to do when that particular trigger is? That's essentially a mix of a flow, a trigger, and an action. And in the action, you can obviously choose a few things like the flow of data. You could put a condition. You could, if the condition is satisfied, you could do something. If the condition doesn't satisfy, you could do the other thing. So there are a lot of templates that helps you get started with Flow, or you can start from a uh, blank flow. You could start building it on your own, but there are a lot of sources that are available, and a lot of actions that are available to get started. It's not that it's very easy to get started with Flow, as long as you know what is the trigger that I'm gonna do, and what is the trigger that I want to invoke the flow on, and what is the action that I want to do. So the portal, which is obviously available on the mobile, gives you a list of my flows, approvals, templates, connectors, and feature template collections. And you can there is a link to how you get started on using the flow. There is a mobile app. You could get notifications. You can manage your approvals on that mobile app. You could see your flow details, the flow that you are the owner of. You could see the flow history, flow activity, and the flow buttons. You could get it on the respective stores. Okay, I'll just switch to flow demo, and then we'll come back to Power BI. So the flow, there is already. So for Flow, as you went for powerapps.microsoft.com, you will have to go to flow.microsoft.com, and that's where you get started. You'll have to obviously take subscription, and it signs me in already there. I said I already have one contact creation approval. I would here you see I have one approval request pending, so I'll just go ahead and reject that. So I'll just show you a flow with my Power Apps creating a user, and how it goes through the exact approval flow, a combination of Flow and Power Apps, and how you get the data flow across. So I'll just quickly go through how to create a flow, and then we'll come back to the flow that we have. So you could go and create from templates. You could create from blank, instant, and schedule. So essentially, there are 4 ways. Automated is if you're expecting a triggered trigger invocation to the flow. Instant is if you only want to use that when you want to run it, and scheduled is you have scheduled it and it runs at regular intervals. So what I'll do is I'll go for automated from blank, and I can sorry, demo flow. So I'll just skip this so that we can. There are a lot of things that you can search for a trigger here. These are all the so there are a lot of options you can do with Gmail. There are Adobe, Azure DevOps. You could find lot of triggers that are there. In this case, we'll just skip this and we'll go through the. So this is a very simple compared to the Power Apps. It's essentially a lot simpler UI than the Power Apps UI. As it you need a trigger. The first thing, obviously, you need a trigger. So what I'll do is I'll say, for example, I have a common data service. So I'll do common. So it tells me common data service, and it gives me 4 options. Okay. The 4 options is when the record is selected, created, deleted, updated. So I'll say record is created. So whenever the record is created, trigger this flow. I'll obviously have to choose the environment in which I'm. So this is my environment. Then I have to choose which entity you want. So let's say, for example, I say accounts, and I'll say the scope is business unit. Now this is my trigger, but what is the action that I want to do? So say in this case, I want just to send a mail, right? So send a mail. So it's automatically signs in because I am already signed on to the browser. So I can say send a mail to me. Say new account created. Now I can specify the body of the mail where I can say a new account was created with the following details, and I could go say name, and I can so I have the account details over there, and I'll say account name. And I have something called revenue. Okay, annual revenue. So I'll just send these 2 details. One, and I'll say annual revenue. So that is all. What I have to do is I'll go ahead and say demo flow. So we'll see this in action as well as the one that I have created, which is a workflow flow. So what I can do is go ahead, save it. So I'll go to my flow, and I see my demo flow over here, and I have a team flow, which is what I can do is I just quickly run through what I have done in this contact creation approval. So in this case, I have selected contact and I have said whenever a record is created in a contact, send an approval, send for an approval where this is the mail content that will go to this mail account, and there is a condition here. The condition says if the response is approved, you go ahead and update the record, and in that record you just set the is approved to yes. If it fails, I'm just updating that field. If it fails, you set the is approved to no. So this is the flow that is there. So what I'll do is I will log on to my app, because that's the only way I can create. You have to have an EY to be able to uh, so I'll use the app UI to show the change, and I'll show you the approval email, and as well as I'll delete this. We could use a lot of other functionalities, like entering data or sending data or calling a service as well. Slow. Power apps. Okay. Finally. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll use my app to create a contact, and we'll see the workflow. Or I can use the model app first, and to create a account that should send me the new flow that I have created. So what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and create a new account, and I'll say test demo flow test flow, and for the annual revenue I'll add 5, and I'll say save. This should kick off the flow. What I'll do is for the adding the contact, I will use okay. I'll delete this. Okay. So I'll create a contact. That should, by default, when I create a contact, the is approved is false. Only when it comes to me. So I'll do is I'll create one contact by Ajmal. Uh, city 1. Okay. So I created Ajmal as a contact, and if you see, Ajmal would be here. The status is pending. Go to my mail. This is the new account created where the message is by name, annual revenue. So this is the flow that I got. But for the Ajmal account that I created, there was a workflow. So I will get a workflow mail where I can approve or reject. For this case, I'll go ahead and approve this. And it gives me the details as in the other email where a new contact has been added, name, email address, and city, all the details. You can add more details, but for the purpose of demo, I've added 4 details. And I click submit on this. I will go and this approval is submitted. We'll go ahead and see the history of the first one. This is the demo flow. You could actually see the history. This is for the account where it just sends a mail, nothing else, and it succeeded. It took 2 seconds and succeeded. For the other flow, if you go ahead and see the history, just succeeded 1 minute ago. So if I go to my Power Apps and refresh my data, it should change from pending to approved. It's approved. So this is how flow works. Essentially, it's easy design, easy to design and easy to work with. So I'll switch to
Girita, just wanted to do a quick time check. So we want to leave the last 5 minutes for Q&A, and
yeah.
we have Ajmal back online as well. So if we want to conclude in the next 5 minutes, then we can leave the last 5 minutes for Q&A.
Sure. I have only one thing to show, and we'll conclude. Okay, so the last part is the Power BI, where it's mostly for analytics, and you could use it from a host of sources. All the connectors that are available for Power Apps, Flow, and including custom connectors are available for Power BI, because it's mostly a connector first releases, as I told you, releases for Power BI, and then they are released for Power Apps and Flow. So just quick overview of Power BI. So you could create dashboards, and you could essentially create charts. You could use analytics questions on the Power BI platform, and you could pull data and do mashup using Power Query. So it's a very powerful tool. So all of this in combined Power Apps Flow, Power Apps platform essentially, and the Power BI platform uh, make up the Power platform. So I think I'm done. Ajmal.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I will just quickly go through the case studies. Anyway, we will share the recording. You can go through it. So we have few case studies. Metrobank is one of the Microsoft case studies. It's a high street bank in UK. So it operates 7 days a week. So they wanted to enable, they wanted to change the customer experience at the bank. So they have leveraged Power Apps to do that. So typically when a customer walks in at the bank, so they want to identify the customer, and they want to associate that customer needs with a banker who specializes specifically in that functional area. So they have leveraged Power Apps for that. Can we move to the next slide? So typically, it used to be a manual process earlier, where you have to go to the customer, welcome the customer, ask the need, and then go back to CRM and look for the data about customer. But today, with the Power Apps, and they have created an app where you can quickly identify the customer, bring in customer as you speak to the customer, and based on the customer query or the need, you can associate a banker quickly to the customer. So we can move ahead. So this is the application that has been built. So this is a customer application. The previous one was a application for the guy who greets or meets the customer when the customer walks in. And on the right side, you see the various bankers. Okay. So case study. Apart from that, Sonata has worked with several customers building multiple applications. One such application was a purchase order or requisition app, where when a purchase order is created or purchase requisition is created, the customer wanted some way to do approval, to see the purchase order or the requisition and approve or reject the order. So this leverages finance and operation, dynamics finance and operations in the backend. So this is the way the application looks like. You can see the list of purchase orders. You can approve or reject. You can see the historical details. There is another application that we have created. which is enterprise asset management. So in a large shop floor, when you have machine breakdowns, you can leverage this application to create a service order at the backend, so that a service request is created and a technician can be sent immediately. So in a large factory, it makes sense because you don't need to go back to your room to enter the data. If you are carrying a mobile app, you can enter the service request details, and also you can capture the photograph of the fault that you see in the machinery. So this is another sample of application. So a host of applications can be built to enable that last mile transformation with few simple tweaks with no code environment, which is powered by the Power Platform components that we saw with Power Apps, Flow, and CDS. So we can open for questions now. So we can take few questions. If there are anything else, you can always reach out to us.